Hi everyone, today we talk about how to quit porn. Quitting pornography is not merely a moral or philosophical decision, it is a biological and neurological journey that demands understanding, discipline, and strategy. To change any habit, especially one as stimulating and compulsive as porn consumption, we must begin by understanding the brain's reward system. Pornography activates the same pathways as drugs and highly palatable food. It spikes dopamine, a neurochemical that drives motivation, craving, and pleasure, but over time, this constant stimulation can dysregulate the brain's natural reward circuitry. The more one watches, the more one needs to feel the same level of satisfaction. This is known as dopamine desensitization. Eventually, other sources of pleasure, like relationships, nature, or hobbies, lose their appeal, and the person becomes increasingly dependent on artificial stimulation. The first step to quitting is awareness. Recognize how this habit affects the brain. The act of watching pornography repeatedly teaches the brain to associate arousal with pixels rather than real human connection. Over time, it alters how one perceives intimacy, leading to anxiety, social withdrawal, and often, performance issues in real-life relationships. The brain is incredibly adaptable, a phenomenon called neuroplasticity, but this also means it can wire in unhealthy behaviors just as easily as healthy ones. The good news is, if it can be wired in, it can be unwired. The next critical step is replacing the habit rather than simply resisting it. The brain doesn't respond well to just saying no. Without a meaningful alternative, engage in behaviors that naturally regulate dopamine. Physical exercise, especially resistance training or cardiovascular activity, elevates baseline dopamine in a healthy way and builds discipline. Cold exposure, such as cold showers, has been shown to increase dopamine and norepinephrine, boosting energy, motivation, and resilience. Get sunlight in the morning. Natural light exposure sets your circadian rhythm and improves mood by regulating dopamine and serotonin, both essential for willpower and focus. Additionally, practicing delayed gratification is key. Porn provides instant reward with no effort. Begin training the mind to seek deeper, delayed sources of fulfillment. This can include challenging work, meaningful conversations, or artistic expression. Journaling cravings rather than acting on them, or using mindfulness to simply sit with the discomfort, rewires the brain to resist impulse. These practices teach the nervous system that not every craving must be met with action. Another essential practice is limiting triggers. This means creating an environment where temptations are minimized. Install website blockers, move your phone out of the bedroom, and avoid content that leads you toward relapse. This isn't weakness, it's intelligent strategy. The fewer times the brain is exposed to those cues, the weaker the neural pathways associated with the habit become. Over time, the desire lessens, not by force, but by disuse. Sleep, nutrition, and social connection are often overlooked but crucial. Poor sleep lowers impulse control. A diet high in processed foods and sugar can worsen mood and increase cravings. Isolation, which often leads to loneliness and boredom, makes one more likely to seek out artificial pleasure. Building a fulfilling life full of physical, emotional, and intellectual engagement is not a luxury in this process. It is the process. Relapses may happen. What matters is not perfection, but persistence. Each time you resist a craving, even for a moment, you teach your brain that you are in control. Each success, no matter how small, strengthens new neural circuits and reinforces your identity as someone who is disciplined, intentional, and free. With time and consistent effort, the brain rewires itself, cravings subside, and a new baseline of clarity, energy, and authentic motivation emerges. This journey is not just about quitting something harmful. It is about reclaiming your mind, your willpower, and your ability to find deep, meaningful joy in life. The freedom you're looking for is not in avoiding discomfort, but in learning how to face it and transcend it. You are capable of this change. Pornography overstimulates the brain's dopamine system, leading to desensitization over time. This reduces pleasure from everyday experiences, rewires the brain to associate arousal with artificial sources, and often results in decreased motivation, emotional numbness, and difficulty connecting with real partners. Quitting requires replacing the habit, not just removing it. Activities like exercise, cold exposure, and early morning sunlight help regulate dopamine naturally and build mental resilience, giving the brain healthier ways to experience motivation and reward. Practicing delayed gratification is essential. Porn provides immediate pleasure with no effort, training the brain to expect fast rewards. Resisting urges and sitting with discomfort helps retrain the nervous system to favor patience, self-control, and meaningful pursuits. Environmental control matters. Reducing exposure to triggers such as blocking websites, changing screen habits, and avoiding suggestive media weakens the pathways linked to the habit. The less a behavior is cued, the more it fades through disuse. Sleep, nutrition, and social connection are foundational to quitting successfully. Lack of rest and poor diet increase impulsiveness and cravings, while isolation fuels the urge to seek stimulation. Building a life filled with purpose, challenge, and human connection is critical to long-term freedom. The first point is about how pornography affects the brain's dopamine system. Dopamine is a chemical that plays a key role in motivation, pleasure, and reward. When someone watches porn, dopamine levels spike sharply, giving a strong feeling of pleasure and excitement. However, when this happens frequently, the brain starts to adapt by reducing its sensitivity to dopamine. This is called dopamine desensitization. Over time, the brain needs more stimulation to feel the same level of pleasure, similar to how someone might need more of a drug to get the same high. As a result, everyday things that used to be enjoyable, like spending time with friends, engaging in hobbies, or connecting with a romantic partner, start to feel dull or boring. The brain becomes trained to seek intense artificial stimulation, making real-life experiences less satisfying. This rewiring also affects sexual arousal. The brain begins to associate pleasure and arousal with watching pixels on a screen rather than with real human intimacy. This can lead to problems like reduced interest in real relationships, difficulty with arousal in actual sexual encounters, and emotional detachment. In short, frequent porn use can reshape the brain's reward system, lowering motivation, making life feel less enjoyable, and creating a cycle of dependence that's difficult to break without conscious effort.